The world came back to Wei Wuxian slowly, as if surfacing through layers of thick, hazy fog. At first, there was only a faint awareness of warmth against his skin, the dry scent of incense lingering in the air, and the muffled hum of distant voices arguing just beyond a thin wall. His eyelids felt heavy, as if they hadn't moved in years, sealed shut by the weight of time itself. When he finally managed to pry them open, he found himself staring up at the dark wooden beams of a small, unfamiliar ceiling. For a long moment, he simply lay there, letting the stillness settle around him like a blanket of dust. His body felt completely foreign-light and fragile in some places, achingly tight and sore in others. There was none of the boundless strength he once moved with so easily, none of the vibrant energy that had defined him. Instead, he sensed the delicate, fragile health of someone who had been worn thin by time and hardship. He sat up slowly, the room tilting precariously before steadying itself. A thin, lumpy mattress lay beneath him, the bedding wrinkled and old. Dust clung to the edges of the room, gathering in the corners like forgotten memories. The single candle on a small, rickety table had burned down halfway. Its faint, waxy smoke curled lazily in the stale air. This was not his home. This was not the lotus pier of his youth, nor the burial mounds of his exile. And as he looked down at his own hands, a startling realization hit him. This was not even his body. A sudden jolt of memory, sharp, fragmented, and painful, shot through him. A young man, his face streaked with tears. A desperate final wish whispered into the darkness. A forbidden summoning ritual, so reckless it bordered on self-destruction. Mo Xuanyu. The name surfaced from the haze of his mind like a stone breaking through the still surface of a pond. The memories linked to that name were faint, but unmistakable. The young man had offered up his very life, his soul, for a forbidden ritual, a final, desperate cry for vengeance against those who had wronged him. And in the empty space he left behind, Wei Wuxian had awoken. But it wasn't vengeance that filled him now. It was only a quiet, profound confusion. He lifted his hands again, studying the slender fingers and pale, delicate wrists. These were not the hands he remembered, hands that had once expertly held polished swords, carved powerful talismans, and stirred up trouble wherever they went. These new hands trembled faintly, even without any effort. Before he could explore the room any further, a series of harsh, impatient pounds rattled the door. Mo Xuanyu, are you awake in there or not? The voice from outside was sharp with irritation, grating and unpleasant. Wei Wuxian blinked once, letting the name settle fully upon him. It seemed he would have to play this part, at least for now. He stood up carefully, testing his balance on unsteady legs. The old floorboards creaked loudly beneath his bare feet. Opening the door revealed 3 faceless members of the Mo household, each one wearing a different combination of annoyance, exhaustion, and deep-seated distrust. One of them, a woman with her hair pulled back in a tight, severe bun, clicked her tongue in disapproval. Still dazed? You're always causing trouble, aren't you? Another man standing behind her muttered under his breath, We don't have time for his moods today. Wei Wuxian offered no defense. He simply watched them quietly, observing the strained, hostile atmosphere that clung to them like a second skin. Their hostility was worn and habitual, something Mo Xuanyu must have endured every single day. The woman crossed her arms, her expression hardening. If there's any more nonsense from you today, don't think for a second that we'll be patient. With that final threat, they turned and walked off, leaving the faint scent of their irritation lingering in the air. He followed them at a distance, using the opportunity to study the household. The Mo Manor was old, built from sturdy stone and dark wood that bore the deep marks of time and wear. The halls were dim, with only the pale, weak light of morning slipping through small, square windows. But more than just the physical age of the place, Wei Wuxian sensed something else lingering here. Something unsettled, something watching. Even without his golden core, his spiritual instincts were as sharp as ever. A faint, thin ripple of resentful spiritual energy drifted along the edges of the corridor. It clung to the corners of the rooms, especially near the older, more neglected parts of the house. He walked slowly, letting the fragmented memories of Mo Xuanyu surface in his mind. The young man had been treated as an unwelcome guest, a burden the family tolerated only because they had no other choice. His life had been small and cramped, suffocated by the constant coldness of those around him. He had loved music, but his talents had gone completely unnoticed and unused. He had craved affection but received only scorn. And in the end, that profound despair had driven him to perform the ultimate sacrifice, to bring Wei Wuxian back into the world of the living. Wei Wuxian touched a hand to the cool stone wall. The deep resentment that permeated this place had not come from Mo Xuanyu, nor from the tired, irritable tenants of the manor. It was older, deeper. Someone called out from the kitchen, pulling him from his thoughts. The day's work was already being distributed: sweeping, washing, errands, repairs. As he passed by the main room where the family was gathered, a few pairs of eyes turned toward him with thinly veiled annoyance. He accepted a broom without a word and began sweeping the cobblestones of the courtyard. Every motion revealed more about the body he now inhabited. The slight tremors in the fingers, a distinct weakness in the knees, a tightness in the chest whenever he took a deep breath. But even though the body was fragile, his mind remained sharp and steady. The courtyard was surrounded by low, single-story wooden buildings. A light wind rustled across the tiled roofs, carrying with it the faint whispers of distant voices. Chickens scratched at the dirt, and two children played loudly nearby. It all seemed so normal, so peaceful, yet the air still carried that subtle, unnatural chill. Wei Wuxian watched a man repairing a broken lantern, its wooden frame old and splintered. As the man's hammer struck the wood, a faint tremble in the ground traveled up Wei Wuxian's spine. The man felt nothing, completely oblivious. But Wei Wuxian paused, his eyes narrowing. Another disturbance. A little later, while helping to carry a heavy bucket of water, he passed by a room whose door was slightly ajar. A whisper of cold air drifted out from within, brushing against the back of his neck like an icy finger. He stopped, letting the bucket rest at his feet. The room was mostly covered in shadows, but in the center of it, half hidden under a dusty cloth, lay an object that pulsed faintly with spiritual residue. Something had happened in there, something the Mo family was either ignoring or actively pretending not to notice. By nightfall, the manor had grown quiet and still. The crickets outside chirped in the dry grass, and the paper lanterns flickered weakly along the corridors. Wei Wuxian moved quietly through the darkened house, following the faint traces of resentful energy that tugged at his senses. They guided him toward the abandoned wing of the manor, a place where the wooden doors were warped with age and the air was significantly colder. He pushed one of the doors open. Dust swirled upward, catching the pale moonlight that filtered through the cracked windows. The shadows stretched long and distorted across the empty corridor. The walls here were older, the floorboards weaker. Every step he took carried a soft, ghostly creak. He followed the energy deeper into the abandoned wing. The silence here felt deliberate, as if the house itself were holding its breath, waiting. Finally, he reached a locked storage room at the very end of the hall. The energy was strongest here, a cold and angry presence. He knelt down, brushing aside the thick layer of dust on the floor. He saw thin markings, faint scratches that revealed something had been dragged beneath the floorboards. Something had been sealed here, or perhaps hidden away very carefully. He pressed a hand flat against the aged wood. A cold, resentful pulse answered his touch, and then he heard footsteps. Soft, controlled, and almost completely soundless. Wei Wuxian stood up slowly, holding his breath in the dim, dusty corridor. The moonlight caught the silhouette of a tall figure approaching immaculate white robes. A perfectly steady posture and the faint breeze catching the ends of a four-head ribbon tied with unmistakable precision. Lan Wangyi. The air in the corridor felt sharper instantly, as if a finely honed blade had just cut through the heavy stillness. Wei Wuxian met his gaze, and for the briefest of moments his heart stuttered. Lan Wangyi's eyes were as calm and clear as ever, like pools of moonlit water. Not a single word passed between them, but the immense weight of their shared past filled the silent space. Lan Wangyi's presence alone carried a quiet, unspoken authority that seemed to make the very shadows retreat. And in that dim, dusty corridor, with dust motes swirling around them and the floor cold beneath their feet, Wei Wuxian realized that his unexpected return had already changed the fate of this quiet, troubled manor. And perhaps the fate of the entire world beyond it as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. We'll see you in the next video.